What is life? What is death? What am I doing here? Who am I without?
I sat up in bed and I realized in that instant of sitting up in bed and breathing, I went, "Ugh," like this breathing in air. I realized I hadn't been breathing the whole time that I would have been in this experience. And I made that sound so loudly, it woke Tony up, and he sat up and said, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I said, "I don't know, but my life will never be the same again."
It got bigger and bigger and brighter until it was filling in every direction, and it was made up of lights and flames and white, and just got closer and closer, and then all of a sudden it hit me.
But suddenly there was like this kind of like this portal just opened, that there I could just sense that I have access to all the information in the universe.
So I had like this very deep connection with my team, offered up this prayer, and within like 2 months, my entire life fell apart. So, spirit doesn't mess around. And when you ask, it is always given.
And then in that dream, I understood that what I am is mirrored throughout the whole cosmos, that I'm part of all of that. I am literally part of everything in the cosmos, and all of that is part of me. It can be seen by me through these mirrors. And so I felt like this web of life, you cannot unplug from it. You cannot get out of it. No matter what you do, you are in it, and it is glorious. And all of that energy and potential and creativity and possibility is ours. And that all of the universe is reflected in our very being, in our very selves. And everything that we are is reflected throughout the whole universe too. There is no separateness. There is no such thing as anything being separate.
2020, what a ride. My life is 100,000 times better than I ever imagined it could be.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Buddhist Biohacker. My name is Lisa. I am your host and mystic guide of the Buddhist Biohacker YouTube channel. Welcome, everybody who is joining us today. We are creating uplifting content one bite at a time, and we are so happy to be here once again with Satyam for our Living Yoga series. Welcome back, Satyam.
Hey, great to be here again with you, Lisa. Pleasure.
Oh, I love it. It feels like a month is too long. I feel like, because I really miss you every time. It's like, oh, finally, we're going to talk again. And I'm really excited about our topic today because I can't tell you, I was shocked when I got my yoga teacher certification. I was shocked at how many of my friends and family were like, "Oh, I can't do that. I'm not a yoga person. I'm not flexible." And I thought, "Well, wait." Like I felt like, how did you not understand what it is? So this is a great topic.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's one of the common myths of the contemporary Western yoga movement.
It totally is. And I want to just shout out to Karen. Welcome in, Karen. She's one of our new members to the Buddhist Biohacker YouTube channel. And hi, Anne. Welcome. For everybody who's joining, I want to hear, what is your yoga excuse? Why don't you share in the comment box today? What's your excuse for not practicing yoga? That's what I want to hear. And then we can address it here. So, Satyam, where do you want to start?
Yeah, and I'd also like to call out for myths of what you have seen in the yoga movement, and let's dispel all the myths so everybody can come on in under the great tent of yoga. And so I thought we would start over this overarching myth of I'm too stiff to do yoga. And then with students, I had a gathering last month and we collected other myths or other things that they have noticed. And later on, we can kind of go over those as well. And whatever else people like to add to that. So a call out for those things, misnomers they've witnessed or taken, observed in the movement. But let's get into this thing that I am too stiff to do yoga, right? I think that's a common misperception that you have to be flexible to do yoga, and it brings me up to one old yogic mystic whose name was Astavakra. Asta in Sanskrit means 8, and Vakra means fold, I believe. And there's an Astavakra asana, which is one of the very difficult arm balance posture. But he was a person, and as best as we can tell, he must have been born with some type of birth defect, and they called him 8-folded person. He had some type of birth defect. But he was a great sadhaka, a great meditator. And that just shows that it's not about what form your body is or how far you're flexible. Yoga is really a mind practice. It's mind, and the body is just the external presentation. And a lot of the real work that's going on in our yoga practice is what's going on with our mind, with our inner organs, with our glands, and those systems. And what we see, the very tip of the iceberg, is like the so-called flexibility. So the flexibility is kind of like the external show, and no one should be, intimidated or there's kind of two sides to the coin. Some people think that you have to be flexible to do yoga, therefore I can't do it, which is wrong. Everyone can develop along the path. And then there's the other thing that, okay, if you really are stiff, which it may be true, then all the more reason to practice yoga. It reminds me of like when I was running a meditation club in graduate school. I founded a progressive spiritual society and had meditation, and folks would come all through the semester, and then the last 2 weeks of the term, when they were really stressed out, no one would come. They're like, I'm too stressed out to meditate. And we were like, no, this is the time to come. And so there's the one thing that, if you're feeling flexible, all the more reason to join in. Inflexible, then all the more reason to join in. And I think that that people think that you have to be able to put your ankle behind your head, or you have to be able to do all sorts of contortions, really contortions rather than, but yoga is really about massaging the body, massaging the glandular portion of ourselves. And we're going to talk about how the glands are the linking point between the physical and mental bodies. But this idea that you have to be able to reach a certain point or be flexible is that doesn't have any bearing on one's practice. First thing is that when everybody comes in, everybody's on their own mat. So it's not like you're sharing, everyone has their own space to practice once we get past this pandemic, if we're going for a group session. And otherwise, so what you're doing on your mat does not impede what anyone else is doing on their mat. So if you do a forward fold and you touch your knees, and another person does a forward fold and they normally touch their toes, but because their mat is next to yours, now they can only touch their knees. That doesn't happen. What they can do on their mat, they do. And what you do on your mat, you do. So there's nothing about that you're going to hold up the class, or that your inflexibility is going to be, rather people are going to be inspired. Oh, look, this person came in and look how courageous they are, and they're moving through the session. So it's really about openness and expansion. That's really what the yogic principle is. And wherever you are, then you expand from that point. So there is no requisite to be a particular, don't wait until you're flexible to start doing yoga. That day may never happen. Yoga is the ideal way to allow the body to open up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Well, and you bring up some really good points. I had a yoga teacher in my training who didn't believe in having mirrors in her yoga studio, because she felt like everybody's always looking in the mirror at each other and comparing each other instead of just really working your own practice in your mat. So I think what you're saying too is a good point. Like, we're all in our own practice. Like, we all are different, and so it's good to be inspired, but not to compare, I think. So I always thought that was interesting, because I thought sometimes when I practice at home, Satyam, I wish I had a mirror, because I want to be able to see if I'm really in alignment. And it's hard to tell sometimes when you're not able to see it. And sometimes I think it's really good we don't, because you really have to feel into your body. What's your opinion on all that? I'm curious.
Yeah, interesting. I was teaching at I had six different establishments where I was teaching, where I was renting out space or so forth, so on, using six different places. And only one of them had a mirror. And I would never start the class with people facing the mirror. I wanted them to just forget about the mirror. It was just on the side. And then for a little bit of portion of the class, we might do where we're facing the mirror. But by that point, people were in their flow of the practice. They weren't. If they're facing the mirror at the beginning, everybody starts fixing their hair or straightening their clothes and all that type of. They're really self-conscious, and so the mirror has its place. I can't say it doesn't have its place, but the mental mirror is far superior. It's far better to you to feel the pose from the inside out, to not be self-conscious, and every so often, I suppose a mirror can be a helpful tool, but I don't think it's a requirement. And now it's interesting for me that prior, when we were in live, I was always looking at my students and not seeing myself. And now, teaching all the Zoom classes, I have to make sure I'm projecting a good image and so forth so they can follow along. So I'm primarily looking at myself, which I've gotten accustomed to. I'm kind of using that mirror image as a teaching tool. I can see exactly. So it has its place, but I think mostly we can feel it's if we can feel the pose inside out. That's really when we start getting a sense of our practice physically. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and understanding, like, I think for me, when we talk about being too stiff, and we've got a great comment from Hope here too, we'll get to in a second. So for everybody who's joining in now, you can share a comment as to what are your yoga myths or your yoga excuses as to, why it's tough for you to practice, or what you're afraid of, or what you've heard about that you are wondering if it's true or not. We'd love to hear it. And, I have incredibly tight hamstrings. That's my journey. And so does my dad. So I'm sure there's some kind of genetic something or other. And so all of my life, even I was a cheerleader in high school, all those things could not touch my toes. I really have had a difficult time. And what I learned through the yoga training, going through the training to be a teacher, was that it really isn't impossible, first off, to stretch those out. But, second off, that doesn't really matter, that you can actually do a downward dog with a chair if you have to,
Yeah.
with straight legs, to be able to get your body into that alignment and get the benefits of the posture. So I think it's worth talking about, and I'm going to throw it to you, like, how we can benefit from these postures, even if you're not everybody is going to throw themselves up in a handstand. I mean, that's just not, or splits, or, lotus, or any of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. The yogis say that there are 50,000 postures, yoga asanas and mudras.
Wow.
But if we were to try to practice them all, there'd be no time to do anything else. It'd be silly. The point here is that there's multiple asanas that work the glands in the same way. So you find a posture that's suitable for you. Okay, just a side bend. Okay, done. It does not need to be fancy to be effective. And there's so many postures that have overlapping qualities on the glands. And this is really what I want to get about, that the real work that's going on is inside. Yoga is more about mind than body. Body is a tool. Mind is an eternal type of quality that we have. That it's timeless. Mind is timeless. Body ages. And so what we're doing in our physical yoga practice is we are the stretchiness and the muscular tone. Those are byproducts of the glandular exercise of which yoga is. It's a glandular exercise. The glands primarily hover around the main chakras, and by that process, our practice has an effect on the mind. It starts to calm the mind. And so we're using the physical body as a harness for the mind. And then the mind in the meditative practice, when we do purely something psychic or psycho-spiritual, then that naturally has an effect on the body as well. When you start deep breathing, the body systems start to come into a state of pause. And when you start ideating in a particular way, or focusing on different chakra points, courage can develop. All different things happen. And that's by the glandular secretions. And the glandular secretions can be enacted two ways. One, by physical pressure, which is what the asanas are. They put pressure on the glands or take pressure off the glands. And that regulation of the glandular secretions then has an effect on the mind. So you can go from physical to psychic, and the channel is the glands. Or you can go from psychic to physical. If, for example, let's say someone's really nervous and their hands are sweating. If you have them close the eyes, you take and you guide them through a meditation, they will no longer be nervous because they had a shift in mind, and the hands will stop sweating. The glandular secretions stop. Similarly, you can have someone close their eyes, think about their favorite piece of chocolate cake, and the glandular system will start creating saliva in the mouth. So there is no physical cake, but the mind affects the glands. That's what we're getting at. Mind affects the glands, and the physical practice of the yoga postures affect the glands, which then affect the mind. So it's a two-way street. And so the real work that we're doing in our physical postures is that underbelly, under the hood. It's not the clothing. It isn't how far you reach. It's that gentle massaging and putting pressure and deep pressure off various glands, which then have effect on the chakra system and the mind. And that's the main thing. So But everybody just sees with the crude eyes. They just see the outside. They don't take note of the vibrational shift, or they can. If your mind is more subtle, you'll take note of the vibrational shift. And at the end of yoga class, everybody's more calm, more self-assured, more sanctified, more just by that practice of going through those motions. It helps to calm the mind. So that's really what we're after in yoga. Someone might be super flexible and they might be a bank robber. There's no telling. Flexibility itself does not denote the quality of the human being. Malcolm X used to talk about in his early days, in his autobiography, how he used to go in and take the watch off the sleeping person. He had all sorts of, he had great balance and all sorts of physical abilities but that was the wrong use of the human body. And he'd learned that obviously in his life. But the point is that flexibility is not the quality of the human being. The quality of the human being is the mind. And all the physical postures help in refining, calming, centering, awakening the mind.
I love it. Hope says she cannot hold herself with her right arm, fake shoulder. So she's afraid to do one-armed yoga.
Well, I see. Well, I gotcha. There's lots of ways to do that. First of all, there are a lot of yoga postures are standing postures. Then it's mostly a non-issue. Then there's kneeling postures, and then there are seated postures. So a lot of the postures you don't really need to balance on or support yourself. The idea that downward dog is like the epitome of yoga is, that's a trend. It's not a fact. I used to intentionally teach classes and not do downward dog the entire class. And sometimes other teachers would come to the class and be like, that was so refreshing. we didn't spend 1/3 of the time in down dog, or we didn't even do it. So the idea that you have to balance on the arms that's not true. You can have a complete practice without balancing on the arms. I teach a chair yoga class these days twice a week. And someone wrote to me, I said, oh, you should join the class. And they said, oh, I thought it was for only disabled people. I said, none, come in and you see how engaging it is. And so we do the whole class in the chair. There's not a...
Awesome.
Yeah. So I would say to Hope, don't worry about your shoulder. You do what you can with it. There's lots of things. Maybe an elbow can work, or I'm not quite sure the exact dynamic. I'd probably want to lay eyes on you to see, but there's a lot that yoga has to offer. Whether you're missing a limb, look what they're doing with the I forget what the exact name of it, but with the troops who've come back, who've undergone serious injury. There's all sorts of groups that work with them and doing yoga poses to help them. And some are missing arms and legs and things, and you can engage. So one should not feel that, okay, I can't do a side plank, or I can't do a crow pose, or I can't do, there's so many other ways to compensate and to get the benefits you don't need any particular type of pose. And you certainly don't need arm balances per se.
Yeah. That's a good question and a good answer. And I'm curious, when we talk about, this being stiff and the flexibility, when you go to take a yoga class and it's the first thing you're doing of the day and you are feeling really stiff and really, what's your advice about how to get yourself mentally and physically prepared to even get started? Whether it's just you're stiff on the day, like my husband just went skiing and he tried to do some yoga with me, and it was like his whole body hurt. And I know some people are scared to try, and they go to their first class and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't do anything these people in this class are doing. So what's some of your advice to kind of mentally and physically prepare to get into that yoga class if it's the first time you're really trying it out, or you're just physically feeling stiff and know you need to stretch out, but you're not sure what to do?
Right. The first thing I would say is be patient. Just settle into it. And the fact that you're there and doing something is super positive. That's totally that good for you for getting there and doing that and getting on the mat, whether it's your first time or you just woke up and you're really, really stiff for whatever reason. So that's one thing, is to just accept where you are physically and know that it's not our physical form that makes the practice. And if you want a very practical tip, a very practical thing, I'd say try and stretch the glutes a little bit, because the glutes connect to the hamstrings and to the back. And so if we think about something very practical, that's the first thing I do. If I wake up, I'm stiff, I'm like, I need to stretch my glutes, because they are tugging from my back, and I'm bent over like a 155-year-old man. And I got 100 years before I get to that age. So I need to, the glutes are, there's a lot to it, and there's a lot of simple glute stretches that can be done. So that's one thing. But the other is just to literally do what you can. As you engage, things will loosen up, and you might surprise yourself. And hold off judgment until the end comes, and then see how you feel. And if you feel better at the end than when you started, then that's enough. That's your. And everybody feels better at the end of the practice. Wherever they were at the beginning, they feel better by the end. So I would say just stick with it. Don't sell yourself short or deny yourself the opportunity because it's a little difficult at the beginning.
Yeah. Well, and Anne's saying your chair yoga is wonderful. I have no doubt. She said it's all stretch and no stress.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I love chair yoga. I've gone to some, I'm a big alignment Iyengar nerd, and I went to the Iyengar studio here in Denver before COVID. It's been closed down since then, so hopefully it reopens. It's been live streaming, but they have whole classes with the chair also, and I just think that's great, because again, for me to be able to feel the alignment and form of a downward dog with the chair was an incredible experience for me, because then I understood. I think you have to feel the postures in your body to really understand how they're supposed to feel. And I think we often do so many of these postures incorrectly, and we're all hurting ourselves and not even realizing it. So it was an amazing experience on the chair. I mean, you guys would be amazed. I think I did more back bends and things that I just didn't even think I could do using the chair, taking the relief off of the hamstrings and the legs. So I love chair yoga. I think it's great.
Yeah, no. I taught a chair yoga class this morning. It's some of my favorite classes to teach. And you can explore the poses in so many different ways because you've got the support of a chair, and really awaken yourself to other aspects of the practice. So no, I think it's great. And I'm also, and for that matter, the more props the merrier. If you need a block, that's another thing. Some people come in, they're so stiff and they have trouble staying cross-legged. Put a block, sit on a block, lift the hips above the knees, and you'll be far better off. So there's lots of ways to do that. And we're a human family. And if someone ever shames anyone then shame on them. If someone is not so-called, oh, that person was, I don't really see that happening much, but it may have. I'm sure it could happen, and that person, there's nothing. That's just an expression of their own degenerated mind. There's no competition. We're all brothers and sisters, and the yogis say the only way to become great in this world is to help others become great. You can't become great by yourself. And so it's a very collaborative, collective, welcoming. And if that is not going on in the class that you're taking, I would say go look at another class. Find the right environment for you. That's an important aspect.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think you have to be able to be your authentic self and not feel like you're judged or shamed. And those are usually yoga classes, studios, things that I run away from, is when I go to a class and I feel like it's one big competition. It's never the energy that you want in a yoga class, is to feel like you're competing. I remember being in a class And it was a more advanced class. And because of my knowledge of yoga, I wanted to do the more advanced class. I wanted to push myself. But at the end of the class, it was like, okay, everybody go up in your handstands, which I could not do. And it was really, those moments can be the ones that really like talk about a myth, right? A yoga myth is you have to be this like athletic, flexible, strong person. And, it's the very first thing to scare you away from going to a class is when something like that happens and you're like, everybody's showing off what they can do.
Right.
And then you're all in the ego and you're not even following the yoga.
No, I mean, what you just said is right. It's the audacity of the ego that you're practicing, and you're not practicing anything having to do with yoga. That's like hijacked. Yoga became hijacked in that regard.
It totally did.
It
totally did. And I won't name names, but there's definitely some corporations out there who have hijacked it for sure. And it's all about, rotator cuff surgery after being in the class instead of the actual practice itself.
Yeah, no, it's a mind practice, and it's a practice of acceptance and realization and subtlety. And I'd like maybe we can start getting into some other myths about the yoga practice. And if anyone has them, like one that folks that talked about, or myths or stumbling blocks or hurdles for coming into a class. Like one of my students said, I thought that the fear of keeping up, and we've kind of addressed that already today, but that was something just to put it out there in those terms, that some people have that, but one way to go about it is to talk to the teacher ahead of time, or to go with a friend or two, have a little bit of support. But there shouldn't be no one should feel that I can't keep up. It's not like that. We're not running a race. It's not, everybody's on the mat. There's no question. Another one is that some people feel that the myth that yoga is a religion. And it's not a religion. It's a practice. It recognizes a spiritual realm of life, but there's no belief system attached to it. And so it's open. It's open. I mean, the only requisite they say for yoga is that you have to have a human body. If you got that, you're set. And all aspects of yogic spirituality are completely universal in approach and have nothing to do with social standing or any type of external phenomena or be part of any particular club or group or anything of that nature. It's totally unbounded, unbridled freedom of universal proportion. So there's nothing, it's not a religion, it's a practice, and it's a practice for physical body, mental body, emotional body, spiritual body. Yeah. Another one is the gym workout, which is what you were saying. Yoga, it's a gym workout. I can't do 100 planks, so I can't do yoga or whatever you want. And that's not. And by practicing, one will get stronger. One will experience enhanced flexibility. Those were coming up, but those are the byproducts of the whole wonderful glandular transformation that happens, which then affects the mind. Another interesting, tanu means body in Sanskrit, and the yogis say that the body is in a state of generation up until the age of 39. After that, it's in a state of decline. Now, how steep that decline is, that depends. If you eat at McDonald's every day and all that type of stuff, then it'll have naturally a sharper decline. But the body, the idea that it's a body exercise, then someone who's 80 or 90, they'll be like, oh, you're a failed, it sets yourself up for failure, because the yogis they may have lost muscle mass and all different types of things, but their mind is shining bright and they can see directly into, they can see the unseen. And mind is timeless, and the body's just a house for the mind. And so you want to keep the body free and flexible and healthy so that the mind is free. But once that mind is activated, I mean, someone can be laid up in a hospital bed, but have the mind to see, across So that's the main thing. And if we think it's just a body exercise, well, heck, everybody's body is going to decompose in this life. I mean, everybody's going to get at one point. Everyone will get a 0 score on their final exam, and that's not the way. It's the wrong measuring rod. And naturally, to be egotistical about look how it's kind of like the some of the things about beauty these days. And it leads to an inferiority complex later on because the physical body wanes, wrinkles happen, different things happen. And those things are nothing those things should be proud of. Look how many years I've walked this earth and done good works, and it's not a down point, but the beauty, I'm going a little bit off topic, but the main thing is the measuring rod should be proper. And the measuring rod is mind, not body. And one's self-worth is based on mind and conduct and not body. And for that matter, if you want to know a good yoga teacher, or if anyone's speaking high-sounding words, make sure it's backed up by their action. That's another thing that every yoga teacher's realized, or every yoga teacher can read my mind. Forget about that. When I first started going to group meditations, then they call it Dharma Chakra, then someone would end the collective meditation. And I used to think that they were like totally tapped into everyone's mind and they knew the exact time to end the meditation. Then I realized they just had a stopwatch after half an hour was over. And I asked the guy, I said, what do you do? How do you know when? He said, when time is over, then we stop. So don't put too much glory and greatness and omniscience, so-called omniscience on the yoga teacher's normal person. And if you want to know how good they are, watch the way they behave in mundane life, in their daily life. That's their, not what they do on the mat, not what the words come out of their mouth. See how they behave 24/7. Mm-hmm. And that's the best way to and then if someone has some words to say and you appreciate those words, that's wonderful. But don't build the person up because they can do balance on their fingertips or because they use some fancy words or something, or shloka or whatever it may be. The quality of the person is based on their conduct.
Yeah, totally. Well, and you made a few good points in there I wanted to touch on. One is when you talk about the body, I think there's a big excuse of and I kind of have several things I want to say. One is the big excuse of I have nothing to wear, or I can't wear those stretchy pants, or right. Something about that. But I also think that goes hand in hand with the equipment. And you had brought up the props. And man, if I got anything out of my initial yoga training, it was how to use the props. And Satyam, I feel like we should be teaching everybody how to use props. Yeah. Everyone's scared of it. That's a huge yoga myth, I think, whether it's a myth or a block. But when you walk into a yoga studio and they have the blocks and the straps and blankets and all these things piled up on the wall, most people, including myself, before I knew how to use those, I didn't grab them. I was afraid to touch them. I didn't know what they were supposed to do. And those are the number one thing you need when you're too stiff is those props.
Yeah. And not only, and they can do, and some people think that the mere reaching for a block means that you're somehow deficient or defective, and that you're already operating from a deficit. Every month at Renaissance Yoga, we do a monthly challenge. And 1 month, just before the pandemic, I think it was February of 2020, I did a block challenge, and everybody was coming with 2 blocks, and we did blocks to make the poses more accessible and to make them more challenging, and all different ways we use blocks throughout the whole month in all the classes. And it really opened up the practice for people were different ways to balance. We were balancing on blocks. We were using blocks for if we couldn't touch our toes, and they were used in all different ways. And the whole thing became totally destigmatized, that everyone's like, let's get the blocks, let's use them. For whatever way you needed to use them, they were used. And I'm all for it. Whatever people need to make the practice safe, to make the practice accessible, use it.
Yeah. We've got a great question from Nina. Michelle's asking how Cauldron is. She's doing very well. Thank you. She had her little drama crash 2 weeks ago at the house, but she is back to her normal kitty self and wants to join us today. I guess she doesn't normally do this during a show, but here she is. She's not going anywhere. But Nina has a question. It goes back to what you were saying about the teachers. She is a newly certified teacher. She's asking if we have any words of advice for her as a newly certified teacher.
Yeah, I would say be personable, be true to yourself, and work on teach to your strengths, what you feel most comfortable with, and don't be afraid not to know something. No one in this world knows everything. So if someone asks you a question, and don't think that you have, because you're a teacher, you therefore have to know and be able to be proficient at every single yoga pose that's ever been done on this earth. It's not like that. So long as you're giving your students a chance to learn and grow in a safe and just environment, then that's a wonderful teacher. And don't I never posture not physically but psychically to promote yourself or show yourself as something that that you're not. You don't need to compete with anything. You just need to share what inherent gifts you have and what knowledge you have, and that knowledge will naturally grow, and you become better and better the more you teach. And always remember, everyone can tell when someone's not being sincere or authentic or super. Everyone can sense that. So just if you're honest and sincere, and if someone asks a question you don't know that, don't make up an answer. Say, let's research that. Let me get back to you. Or I don't know. Let's look in. So I would say, take all the pressure off about what you think a teacher needs to be, and just be what you are comfortable with yourself. And be excited to help your students learn and grow and come into the practice. And if you can help them become a conduit, like a teacher could, someone who's physically disabled, has no use of their legs, might be a wonderful teacher because they're a great medium for helping people to move ahead. And remember, it's not about, you're there to help your students grow. And if you can be encouraging and supportive to them in that process, then that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think my advice is just to remember, you're holding this container. Your classroom is your container for those students to really connect with themselves. So I think I always keep that in mind whenever I'm teaching yoga, whether it's an individual or a class, is, am I creating a safe space for them to explore their body and to explore their mind and to explore themselves? And as long as you go in with that intention, I think, the class is always feels good, Yeah,
absolutely. And people can sense it.
Mm-hmm. They can, and they know that it's safe for them to be themselves. And it's not, there's definitely different kinds of yoga teachers. There are yoga teachers that are going to push you physically and are focused on the fitness aspects. And then there are spiritual yoga teachers, there's different ones for different experiences and for different types of people. And I think it's, don't try to be something as a teacher that you're not. Be who you are, because you'll attract the students that want to be with you as who you are, and vice versa. As a student, if you're a student, look for the classes and the teachers that you really connect with. Don't try to push yourself to go to some class that you just don't feel comfortable in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
One thing I want to ask you about, Satyam, because when I saw your topic title when you sent it over, whenever that was, a week or two ago, I was like, oh, this is so good. And I think one thing I wanted to touch on is, there is this thought that yoga in the Western culture, especially the US, the thing about yoga is, it's a physical fitness thing. It's a class I'm going to take for my body. And so I wanted to touch on, how do we practice yoga that's not physical? Because there's so many ways for us to practice yoga, and what that really means and what it's all about, that the mental, spiritual aspects of it that you can engage if you're not in a position to go to a yoga class.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. When I first heard that they were having yoga classes in the US, I was like, how do you do that? How do you bring, what do you, I didn't know what they were doing. And then if they, oh, they're doing the yoga postures. I get it. They're doing that. But yoga it's about cultivation of mind. And you don't need anything outside yourself to do that practice. Maybe some guidance would be helpful. But if we look at Ashtanga yoga, the 8 limbs of yoga, the first 2 are about how you conduct yourselves in this world and how you interact with your own self, is more yogic morality. The third one's the asanas. The fourth one is pranayama, which is this alternate breathing. It's a meditative technique. Fifth one is pratyahara, withdrawing oneself from external physicality and goading the mind within. And sixth one is dharana, concentration. And seventh is dhyan, sustained meditation. Eighth is samadhi, the culmination. But what I'm getting at here is that these things are it is a spiritual practice. The physical aspect is just a little bit of a medium to help get the body prepared for spiritual practice. So what can you do? 1, learn Jama Niyama, the 10 principles of yogic life. And we're going to do that. That's coming up that's on our calendar in 1 or 2 months. We're going to go over these 10 codes of yogic morality. And if you follow those things, then it doesn't matter what physical posture you do or don't do. If you follow that, you will be you will be one shining light on this earth. And you'll have, so those things, those are, asteya, non-stealing, satya, benevolent truthfulness, ishwar pranidhan, concentration on the supreme. There's 10, and come back or write me, or I'm looking forward when we do that one. So that's 1. If to practice those, ahimsa, don't inflict pain on others. Watch about what things you eat. Watch your interactions with others. So that's those, and then there's the contemplative aspects. If you don't know anything about meditation, you're not sure what to do, lie down on your back and do shavasana, corpse posture. Do it for 10 minutes in a day and just slow down the breath and lie there. It'll have a very beneficial impact on the brain. The yogis say anyone who has a lot of psychic work in this world, they should do mandatory 2 to 10 minutes of shavasana every day. Just lying back, palms facing up, slow down the breath. And naturally, as you gain more interest in the meditative aspects, you'll learn more techniques. But meditation should be done individually. Every so often, it's okay to collectively meditate, but meditation is an individual practice. And so then there's things like fasting, which lifestyle, the diet aspect. Bless you. Yeah. Bless you.
Excuse me.
Yeah, no problem. So those are all things. There's so much that can be done off the mat. Well, what about seva, service? Serve people physically, and if they have everything they need physically, then serve them psychically. And if they have what they need psychically, then help them spiritually. To whatever degree you're able to help others. The yogis say we've come onto this planet to do 2 things: to elevate ourselves and to help others, and that's it. And elevate ourselves does not mean material elevation. It means to enhance our own understanding of who we are in this cosmos, so that we can be a greater tool to help others. So it's not about which posture you can do. That isn't one of the postures are just small helping points to help you grow physically, psychically, and spiritually. And if the postures are not doing that for you, then you're doing anti-yoga. Then the postures you're going in the wrong direction. So it's not about. So there are lots and lots of things to do off the mat for a yogic lifestyle, and we see that coming into form as people learn more about the breadth and scope of yoga, breadth with the deep, the wide vastness of the yogic model. And we see intermittent fasting. Well, the yogis have been fasting for centuries and thousands of years. Let's explore that. There's a huge plant-based diet movement in the Western world. The yogis have been doing that for 7,000 years. So a lot of the yogic teachings are things that progressive people in the West are exploring, whether they ever practice a yoga class or not. So there's lots to be done.
Yeah, I'm so glad you went through all that, and I'm really excited about the Yama Niyama class
Yeah.
or talk or whatever we
Yeah,
want to call it, show, episode,
yeah.
because that was my favorite part of yoga teacher training. You know, I'll tell you what, because we have such a spiritual community here. I mean, that's really so many of you watching and connected in with us are in your spiritual practice. And maybe you've never practiced yoga because you're not in the fitness world, but you've been in this spiritual world. And it's like, well, how do I bridge the two? And there is no greater confidence booster than to connect at your studio with one of the Yama or Niyama classes or workshops that they have, because most studios, traditional ones, will have classes on that now and then. But when I went through that Satyam, here I'm in this like intensive physical training that was not easy for me to do. Yoga has been something I've practiced, but it's certainly for years, but it was all about my nervous system and the spiritual aspects. So I was doing much harder things physically than I'd ever done before. And I went into that class and we went through the niyamas and I was like, oh my gosh, I practice Vidya. Like I do self-inquiry, I do meditate, I do practice, you know, these things that are part of that, you know, being able to focus, being able to do good things for the planet, you know, really actively listening to each other, all of these things. It was like, oh, like that was such a confidence booster for me. And I think for everybody listening who's part of this topic today is like, you know, why are we afraid to go try it, or what's holding us back? And I think remember that your spiritual work and the practice of compassion and all of these things you're trying to do to be conscious in the world is a huge part of yoga. When I went through that, I was like, okay, like I was watching these very athletic, flexible people who did the yoga teacher training who were struggling and having emotional breakdowns and going through all of this intense spiritual initiation kind of stuff because they'd never done it before, where that was like the thing that was old hat for me. I knew how to work through that stuff. So it's just a really powerful thing for everybody who's watching, who is on their spiritual path. Like you're going to bring something to your mat that a lot of people aren't. And that what you bring is the ability to be present, to be conscious, to meditate. You know, that is something that's going to help you to do those postures and to be in that class and to have an experience that most people won't. You might be having really profound shavasana experiences that some of the other people aren't, because they just were there to work their muscles, you know?
Yeah, no, that's all extremely well put, extremely well put. That we are psychic beings. The Sanskrit word for human being is manush, and man, this is the root word of that. The root of that word is man, means mind. We're mental beings. We're not physical beings. The physical body is just one aspect of our personality. So everything is psychic. The yogis are far more concerned about what ideation you have when you do something than the actual action. If someone gives away $10 million only to have their name put in the newspaper the next day, and someone else has 5 pennies and gives away 3 of them to truly help someone, that's a greater gift. The 3 pennies are greater, far outweigh the $10 million grant or whatever you gave. So this world is not this. We are the ideation, that subterranean flow of consciousness that's beneath all the physical manifestation. That is the world that the yogis tap into. The physical manifestation is very, I don't want to say superficial. If with a good heart, you give someone who's hungry a sandwich, it's meaningful. But you know, this idea that materialism is be all end all is garbage. That you know, we judge people on what kind of car they drive or how big their house, and meanwhile, how much did they exploit others in order to get that car, to get that house? So this world is ideational. What goodness do you have in your mind, and how are you executing that during the day? And that's how vast is your mind? How selfish are you? How selfless are you? That's the quality of the human being. And the yogic practices, if done properly, that's what gets built up, not physical strength. Physical strength, what postures you do is, you know, those are fleeting. And as I say, hopefully we'll all age in a healthy way, but you know, I'm caretaking my 92-year-old mom now. We're working on a balanced posture. She's post, but if I were to judge her based on what physical posture we've done, I would have said, okay, she's useless. She's a useless human being, but she's very compassionate, very sweet lady. And we look at the psychic qualities of a human being, not the physical qualities. The postures are just a way to keep the physical body fit to the degree that we can be fit in whatever mode of life we're in. And they're not the defining part. The defining point is our psychic outlook, the vastness. How many people can we care for in this world? How many people, what spiritual, and those things diminish the ego, don't build it up. So, this, the measurement is not physical. The measurement is psychic and psycho-spiritual. And by that point, that's what makes people really wonderful in this world.
Mm-hmm.
That growth. And that's what yoga is all about. But the physical is so easy. That's why materialism can spread so quickly. It's so palpable, so tangible, and the effect and the gratification is so immediate. I mean, it's poisonous, but it's immediate. And so it's very easy to. That's how it got exported to so many countries. We were able, but the real things are the unseen. The unseen, and that's really what makes people wonderful. And we're coming to that slowly. We're coming to that realization as a collective human body. I mean, we've kind of gone through the ditches of materialism in the U.S. more so than other places, perhaps. But anyway, So everything in yoga, it's all psychic and psycho-spiritual. The physical aspect is just a support piece for that other growth.
So beautifully said. And time flies in here, and I'm wondering if you have a story or parting words of wisdom for us today.
Yeah, let's see here. I'll try and jump into the trove of what I may have available. There's a story about Krishna. He was a great yogi who was on the planet, and it leads into what we're discussing today. That Krishna showed up at Vidura's house, and Vidura was not home. Vidura was a great minister, but his wife was home. And the wife was so nervous that this great yogi king, Krishna, had come to her house. And she's like, oh, I have to offer some food. I have to offer food. And she did. She offered food. And he took the food. He accepted the food. And she was so pleased that he was eating it. And then at some point, the husband came home, Vidura came home, and he saw what was going on, and he was shocked, and Krishna was just eating the last bite, and Krishna ate it. In her nervousness, she served him the banana peels, but not the bananas. And Vidura came in, the husband came in and said, we are so sorry for this injustice. And Krishna said, what injustice? That was the tastiest food I've ever had. That your wife, that food was served with such love and such generosity and such sweetness that the food those peels were sweet for me. And I will never forget this wonderful meal. And it's the idea that it's the ideation that makes the action great, not the action in and of itself. And the action should not be judged from material matter, but the ideation behind it. And so similarly, the postures and relates with what we were talking about today, that it's a psychic outlook and the underlying invisible thought behind that's so meaningful.
That's so beautiful and so perfect for today, because that's really what it's all about. I mean, this is such a good conversation, and I want to invite everyone, please, if you're watching on the replay, you can still comment on the video on the replay. You can also join us in the Ajatakasha community app in Yogis, and we can keep the conversation going. In fact, I'll throw up a post in there right now because I'm curious what other myths or obstacles or blocks folks have. So let's just keep this conversation going, because I think Satyam and I love to keep this going and talk with all of you. Satyam, what do you have going on? What's going on in your world, and how can folks connect with you? And do you have anything upcoming?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm teaching 7 days a week. Anyone can join in anytime. renyoga.com, renaissanceyoga.com. This month we're working on a tree pose balance, a tree pose challenge. Folks can join in on that one. That's just a home practice. We gave some guidelines for that. At the Ajatakasha forum, the yogi group, we try and post things and share that way. So yeah, there's lots of things. And I do monitor all the comments that people offer here and respond to them all. So if you have a question, you can leave a comment here, or you can come over to my site. But I do follow this. So if you're watching a replay and you want to say something, I'll catch it. So let me know. But yeah, no, it's great. Great to connect and great to share. And I love hearing from folks.
Yeah, well, we love you so much. I'm so glad we're here every single month. A month is almost too long. So I feel like I could talk to you a lot more. So I'm glad that you take the time to come onto the show every single month. It means a lot to me, Satyam, and I know it means a lot to the community. So thank you so much for being here.
I look forward to this, and I'm so thankful for the platform that you've created. It's so exciting to watch it grow and manifest and all those great things. And it's a pleasure to be here and talk with you always.
Oh, thank you. And thank you to everybody who's watching live or on the replay or listening on audio. We're also on iTunes, Spotify, our Heart Radio, all of the places, so you can get us anywhere. So thank you so much for listening. And we'll be back on Thursday morning with me and Delisa for our This Morning show. If you want to be a subscriber in the spotlight for that show, don't forget that you can post your coffee mug in the Ajatakasha app on the This Morning forum. So don't forget that as well. And we have a big month this month, you guys. We have Aaron Abke coming on the show. Really big deal. Pretty awesome. We also have Terry from Bonzalium coming on to my husband's and I first collaborative show, the Pulsation Music Hour. That's going to be next week. We're going to be talking about all of the spirituality behind the Led Zeppelin band, which I'm very excited about. And just all good stuff. And at the end of this month, believe it or not, it's our 1-year anniversary of One Heart, One Earth and Buddhist Biohacker. We created over 4,000 minutes of content last year in those summits, and we're going to be sharing all of those with you guys as well. So don't forget to click subscribe. I have to remind you guys of that. Don't forget to go to renaissanceyoga.com to visit Satyam. And we do have a new membership program in here on YouTube on this channel. So don't forget to check that out too. You just click join and it'll tell you all about it. But we have some really fun emojis, and I will be doing live stream psychic medium readings for everybody once a month who's in this community as well. So otherwise, I'll see you guys in the Ajatakasha community app. And I love you, Satyam. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.